Hey guys, welcome back to Ripestories. In this video, an HOA president decided my non-HOA farmhouse was part of his kingdom. He sent fines, tow trucks and bogus reports to animal control until one night he showed up himself with two goons and tried to seize assets by breaking into my home. Let's dive right into the video. And the first story starts like this. I bought my house about 3 years ago. It is a small older farmhouse sitting on about 4 acres of land. The key detail here is that my property was built in the late 70s, long before the suburban hellscape that surrounds it now was ever conceived. When the developers brought up the surrounding farmland 15 years ago to build HOA estates, not the real name, the previous owner of my place refused to sell. He held out, so they built around him. This means I am a legal island. My driveway cuts through their subdivision to reach the main road, but my deed is completely independent. I am not and never have been part of their homeowner association. For the first 6 months it was peaceful. I spent my time fixing up the barn, enjoying the fact that I had no neighbors within shouting distance, and then they elected a new HOA president. Let's call him Napoleon. Napoleon was a retired middle manager who clearly missed having subordinates to torment. He was about 5'5" of pure condensed entitlement. The first time we met, he walked right past my no trespassing sign up to my porch while I was sanding some deck chairs. He did not introduce himself, he just handed me a clipboard. "We need your signature on the updated community guidelines," he said, "and you're 3 months behind on dues. We are waiving the late fees as a welcoming gift, but you need to set up autopay." I laughed, thinking he was joking. I told him politely that I was not part of the HOA, and I pointed out the property lines and explained the grandfathered in deed. He turned a shade of purple I didn't even think was humanly possible. "Everyone in HOA is in the HOA. It preserves property values. You use our roads and you benefit from our aesthetics. You will join or we will lien your property." I told him to get off my land, but he didn't move until I picked up a crowbar I was using to pry up old nails. He retreated, shouting that I would be hearing from their lawyers, but I did not hear from lawyers. I instead heard from the compliance committee. It started with letters, fines for unapproved paint color, my house is white, they require beige, fines for commercial vehicle in driveway, aka my work truck, fines for grass height in the back pasture, and I threw them all in the trash. I knew the law, they had zero jurisdiction over me, but then came the harassment. Napoleon hired a private security firm to patrol the neighborhood. These were not actual cops, they were guys in tactical gear driving surplus Ford Explorers with amber lights. They started parking at the end of my driveway, shining spotlights into my living room windows at 11 p.m. I called the actual police. They came out and told the security guys to move along and told me it was just a civil dispute, but this happened 3 times. The cops were getting annoyed with me for calling them, even though I was the one being harassed. Napoleon escalated. He started making false reports. I had animal control show up because someone reported I was running a puppy mill. I have 1 dog. And I had code enforcement show up because of a report about unsafe structural modifications to my barn. Every time I had to take off work, walk the officials around, show them my permits and my healthy dog, and explain the feud. The breaking point of the Cold War phase was when I came home to find a tow truck hooking up my work truck. The driver said the HOA ordered it removed as an abandoned vehicle. I had to physically block the driveway with my other car and threatened to call the state troopers for Grand Theft Auto before he unhooked it. He showed me the work order signed by Napoleon. I went to a lawyer and we sent a cease and desist. We sent certified letters explaining that any further encroachment on my property would be treated as criminal trespass. We outlined the harassment and threatened a lawsuit for interference with quiet enjoyment. Napoleon's response was to double down. He sent a letter back claiming that under some obscure statute regarding community aesthetic integration, they had the right to enforce rules on adjacent properties that supposedly negatively impacted the subdivision. It was legal gibberish, but it showed his mindset. He genuinely believed that he was the king of his little fiefdom and I was a rebellious peasant. Then came the night everything changed. It was a Tuesday around 2 a.m. I was sound asleep when my dog, a usually quiet German Shepherd mix, started going absolutely berserk. He was not just barking, he was growling, backing up towards the bedroom door. I woke up instantly. I heard the sound of metal on metal coming from the back of the house, near the sliding glass door that leads to the deck. I live alone and the police response time out here is about 20 minutes on a good day. I did not grab my phone first, I grabbed my shotgun. I know this sounds to people who are not comfortable with firearms, but the castle doctrine law is very specific. If someone is forcibly entering your home, you have the right to defend yourself. I shouted loud enough to wake the dead. I'm armed, get away from the door. Usually that is enough to send a burglar running. Instead, I heard a voice shouting back. It was Napoleon. Open up, we are seizing assets to cover unpaid liens. We have the authority. He was screaming about liens at 2 in the morning while trying to break into my house. Then came the sound of shattering glass. They had thrown something through the sliding door and I heard the lock turn. I retreated to the hallway using the wall as cover. I yelled one last warning. If you enter this house, I will shoot. The door slid open. And then 3 figures stepped into my kitchen. They were wearing those HOA patrol windbreakers, but they were carrying batons and what looked like bolt cutters. Napoleon was in the lead, holding a heavy maglite flashlight like a club. He looked deranged. His face was sweaty and red in the beam of the tactical light attached to my shotgun. He raised the flashlight and took a step towards me. "You don't tell me what to do," he screamed. "I run this place." He lunged at me. He was maybe 15 feet away. I didn't hesitate. I aimed for center mass, the safest bet to stop a threat, and pulled the trigger. Napoleon screamed, but he didn't drop the way they do in movies. He spun around, dropping the flashlight, clutching his right hand. The shot had gone slightly wide, or maybe he moved his arm in front of his chest at the last second. I honestly don't know. But instead of hitting his chest, I hit him elsewhere, it seemed. The other 2 guards froze. "Get on the ground," I roared. "Face down, now." They dropped the batons and hit the floor. Napoleon was curled up in a ball, wailing about his hand. I kept the gun trained on them while I fumbled for my phone. And then I dialed 911. I told the dispatcher that I had shot an intruder and was holding 2 others at gunpoint. The police arrived in force. They handcuffed me, which I expected, and took my weapon. They provided first aid to Napoleon, who was screaming that I was a murderer and a lunatic, and I was taken to the station and interviewed. I did not say a word until my lawyer arrived. Once he did, we laid it all out: the history of harassment, the fake liens, the trespassing, and the fact that they broke a glass door to enter my home at 2 a.m. armed with clubs. The police investigation didn't take long to turn in my favor. It turned out Napoleon had told the 2 security guards that he had a court order to seize property and that I was a squatter. He had essentially tricked them into committing a felony, though they were still charged with breaking and entering since they didn't verify any of it. I was released without charges. I mean, in my state, breaking into an occupied dwelling at night is practically a suicide note. The fact that I only hit his hand was considered a miracle for him, and the fallout was immense. Update to the story: it's been 6 months since the incident. Napoleon survived, obviously. He lost 3 fingers and has significant nerve damage in his arm. He spent a few weeks in the hospital and was then transferred directly to county jail. He was charged with aggravated burglary, menacing, and harassment. The HOA patrol company lost their license and went under almost overnight after the news broke that their employees participated in a home invasion. The HOA board panicked and they realized that their president had just exposed them to massive liability. They dissolved the board immediately and held an emergency election, and the new board is terrified of me. I ended up suing the HOA, the security company, and Napoleon personally, and the security company settled instantly to avoid a media circus. In the end, I ended up getting a nice payout that will pay off my mortgage and then some, and Napoleon is currently awaiting trial. His defense seems to be that he was acting in his capacity as HOA president and therefore had implied right of entry, which my lawyer says is the legal equivalent of claiming he can fly. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for shooting the HOA president when he broke into my house? And yeah guys, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Do you think OP was the a-hole for defending his property and his life, or not? Let me know in the comments. Comment number 1 said, "You are the a-hole, and before you jump down my throat, this is not a defense of Napoleon, who sounds like a little tyrant. But he was an a-hole and it was legal are not the same as this was the only reasonable thing to do. You knew that this was an ongoing neighbor/HOA feud and you knew who this guy was. You knew he was unhinged, but you also knew he was the kind of moron who thought HOA rules equal the Constitution. When you recognized his voice and heard him shouting about liens, that should have been a giant neon sign that this was just an escalation of HOA nonsense, not some random violent home invasion. You chose to escalate to lethal force anyway. You had a phone, you had 20 minutes until police response? Cool, then barricade, retreat to a locked room and tell 911 that my crazy neighbor and 2 goons broke into my house with batons. You are out in the country. I guarantee the sound of actual glass breaking and 3 guys yelling would have bought you time before they even got near your bedroom. And yeah, castle doctrine does exist, but legal is a floor, not a ceiling. The bar for morally justified lethal force should be a lot higher than just 3 idiots with flashlights and bolt cutters trying to flex HOA power. They were armed, sure, but they were also clearly there to intimidate and grab property, not to execute you. You shot a 60-something-year-old HOA president at center mass from a hallway. That's not "I had no other choice." That is, this was the choice I went to first. You did not just defend yourself, you made sure this situation ended in actual gunfire. You got lucky it was only fingers. If that shell had done what you intended to do, we are talking about death, not just nerve damage. Napoleon is a massive a-hole and absolutely criminally liable, but you still pulled the trigger when there were other options available. That's on you. And yeah guys, let me know what you think about this comment in particular in the comments. Comment number 2, holy crap OP, this is not even a question. The guy broke into your house at 2 AM by smashing a glass door while you were asleep. It doesn't matter if he thought he had authority, you are not even in the HOA, and even if you were, you cannot just conduct a raid on someone's home in the middle of the night. He also had a weapon, the mag light, and lunged at you after you warned him. You literally feared for your life in your own home, and he played a very stupid game and won a very stupid prize, aka losing 3 fingers. And the next one is a really interesting Am I the A-hole story that is titled, Am I the jerk for sleeping with my sister's boyfriend, but it is not what it sounds like. My sister, 26 female, is dating and soon to be engaged to my 25 female ex-boyfriend, 26 male. I know he's planning on proposing or was, as I was helping him, and when I was a 16-year-old, I dated my sister's now boyfriend for about 6 months. It was not a super serious relationship, but we, as most teenagers do around that age, had intercourse. We did it a few times, but nothing obscene. The relationship ended amicably because we simply didn't want to date anymore. There were no harsh feelings and we remained friends throughout high school and college. Well, when my sister was around 23, she moved back to our hometown a year or so after college and he was living here also. They began to spend time together and she asked if it would bother me if they began to date. I had absolutely no problem with it and told her there were absolutely no weird feelings and I did not even consider him a serious relationship as it was nearly 10 years ago. They have now been dating for the past 3 years and he plans to propose and has even asked for my help. Now for the actual conflict. About a week ago, my sister, her boyfriend, and a few of our mutual friends went out to dinner. During one of the conversations, my sister made a joke about how he better propose soon because she was starting to feel like an old maid, her words, and I asked her what she meant and she said they were both saving themselves for marriage. I asked her if she meant in just this relationship or if she was saving herself, period, and she said they had both been saving themselves their whole life. I gave her boyfriend a strange look from across the table and she caught it. She asked why I looked at him weird and I said it was nothing and tried to move past it. She insisted I tell her why because she thought I was judging them and I confessed that we had intercourse in high school and although it didn't really mean anything. She then got mad at him first for lying and somehow he managed to convince her that never happened and then she got mad at me for supposedly making stuff up and, direct quote, trying to sabotage our future marriage because I'm not over him. I told her I was in fact completely over him and that I was also not lying and that they both got up and left. My friends know that I was telling the truth and have tried to contact her and back me up. She has not answered any of them and texted me the day after saying that I wouldn't be invited to the future wedding if I didn't admit to lying. I do feel really bad here and wish I hadn't said anything or lied about why I looked at him, but I felt like I owed it to her because she's my sister and he was lying. Should I handled it differently, not have told her at all, etc.? Am I the a-hole? And yeah guys, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Do you think OP was an a-hole or did she do the right thing? Let me know. Update to the story. Okay, so I'm first going to start with some context to clear up some confusion I was seeing here. My sister and I grew up kind of religious with pretty old-fashioned parents. I didn't really buy into any of the religious stuff, but my sister did. Not quite as much as my parents, but definitely more than me. They always told us to wait until marriage, but I clearly didn't listen to them, and I guess it never occurred to me that my sister probably did. The reason she never knew about us sleeping together is because I didn't tell her, because I thought she might tell my parents and I didn't want to deal with them. The reason I didn't know she was waiting is because she has always been one to keep that kind of thing to herself and is very set on having her own privacy. When I say that we were not in a serious relationship in high school, it is because I'm a firm believer that no high school relationship is that serious. We also both knew that we were not planning on staying together forever. We only slept together 2, maybe 3 times, which in my mind is not very serious, even for teenagers. And when my sister asked me if I would be okay with them dating, she specifically asked if I would find it weird or uncomfortable, and I told her as long as she was not bothered by the fact that we used to be a couple, I had no reservations. She said that she didn't mind it at all, which I mistakenly took as she knew we slept together and didn't care. I'd always known him to be pretty truthful, and I never took it to mean that he actually completely lied to her. At dinner, the 3 of us were sitting at one end of the table and having the argument very quietly, so my friends didn't know what was happening until they got up and left. Otherwise, they would have defended me there. Well, after I confessed that we slept together, he said something along the lines of that never happened, and I don't know why she would lie. I insisted I was not lying. But I also wasn't trying to be hurtful here. He said some BS about how maybe their talk of marriage made me jealous and stirred up old feelings. That's when she turned on me and they left. Now to the update. My sister came over this morning and we had a conversation and made amends. She told me that he had proposed a few days ago, but she hadn't told anyone because what I said was still weighing on her. She said that last night she went through his phone and found out he had been cheating on her repeatedly for most of the relationship and that he slept with people before they were even together. She confronted him this morning and they had a huge argument where he said that the reason he lied is because he knew it was important to her that they were both virgins and she wouldn't have stayed with him if she found out that he wasn't one, and he really does love her and wants to marry her. Well, she thankfully didn't believe him and just ended it. She came straight over to apologize and hear my side of the story. I asked her why she blindly believed him and left the restaurant and wouldn't answer me. And she said that she was embarrassed because waiting until marriage has always been a big deal to her and she didn't want to believe that he wasn't as committed to her as she was to him, and I of course accepted her apology and we both decided to move past it and always trust each other. She also decided that she's gonna take some time to reconsider what values are the most important to her. All is now well, and our ex is totally the a-hole, and please don't say anything rude about my sister. I love her a ton and she just had a weak moment. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. So I share my backyard's fence with my neighbors and of course the one directly behind me, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I think you guys can figure it out, has recently caused a problem for me. We will call her Karen for privacy reasons. But first, for some context, I had been in the hospital for 3 months before I was able to come back to my house. I won't go into details as it is not the focus of the story and it's quite personal to me, but basically I discovered that there was cancer in one of my limbs. I got it treated when I first discovered it around 2 years ago, but recently it has flared up again and caused me a string of health problems, including a lingering cough. So I absolutely hate everything about it, and it's resulted in me spending large amounts of time in the hospital in the past 2 years. Well, anyway, recently I've had to stay there for those 3 months I mentioned to focus on some physical therapy, chemotherapy, and just overall to monitor my health. I was let out once the 3 months were up and recently came back to my house. I was so unbelievably stressed during this time period and being in the hospital was not much help. Also, the hospital food is terrible and being there just reminded me of all my health problems. I was really eager to get home, you know. But when I came home, I was met with another unpleasant surprise. When I came back, I immediately noticed that the fence was pushed up several feet into my backyard. I have a pretty big backyard and I don't have a lot of things out there, so it was noticeable. It's not like seeing someone for months and automatically noticing all the changes to them when you see them again. I thought I was tripping out for a while because I had not been home and maybe it was not as big as I thought it was. But I quickly concluded that I was not going crazy, I was honestly exhausted having just returned from the hospital, so I slept it off for a day before deciding to ask around about what might have happened. The next day I talked to my next door neighbor. We caught up for a bit before I finally told her about the fence situation and asked if she might have known something about why the fence was moved up. My neighbor admitted that she heard a lot of construction going on in Karen's backyard during the months I was gone and heard a lot of splashing coming from Karen's backyard, so she assumed that Karen might have built a pool. Again, we have pretty big backyards, so I was not sure why Karen would need to expand into my yard. I was hesitant in being confrontational, and usually I'm a very calm and collected person, but this move of Karen's took away a noticeable chunk of my backyard, and Karen had not even gotten my approval for this. So I was both confused and pissed off. After the talk with my neighbor, I decided to go talk to Karen. I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, I immediately recognized her as the HOA president. I know there are a bunch of horror stories concerning the HOA, but I joined because the one in my neighborhood seemed alright as far as I'd heard when I first moved in, and I like to reap the benefits of being in one. Anyways, I introduced myself as the neighbor with whom she shares her fence with from the other side, and then quickly explained that I noticed the fence was pushed up into my yard, asking her why that might have happened. She admitted that she built a pool and expanded, just a tad, into my backyard. When I asked why, she said it was so that she could have more space to walk as well as have a pool. I said that she should have consulted me before making a move such as that, and that it was both illegal and disrespectful to build into my property the way she did. Karen scoffed and stammered that she tried to contact me, but that I was not home, and the neighbors told her that I was in the hospital. Well, it was true that I was not at home, obviously, because I had my hospital stay, but it was not like there wasn't anyone in my house at all. While I was gone, I had my friend watch the house. They basically moved in briefly for the 3 months I was gone, they worked from home too, and only go out on weekends or to the gym. So if Karen had actually put in an effort to try to speak to me or someone else about the house, she would have definitely encountered my friend. I pointed this out and she insisted that she did not see anyone home. Either way, I kept arguing with her that it was rude to take advantage of my hospital stay to expand into my property and build a pool without my permission. At this point, she started speaking over me. Actually, she was yelling over me. It was obvious that she was wrong, but she was refusing to admit it, so she was just yelling at me even though I was speaking to her in a calm tone. She also tried flaunting her status as HOA president on me, implying that because she was the leader of the homeowner association, and in her words, helped so many people, that she had the right to do whatever she wanted. Well, obviously none of that was true or legal, and eventually she just stopped me in the middle of my argument and offered me a so-called peace offering. I decided to hear her out even though I was absolutely fuming. She said that because what's done is done, and that we couldn't change the past, she demanded that I would sell her the piece of land she essentially illegally annexed for a meager $4,000. She insisted that she was already using the land anyway, so I had no choice according to her. I refused. The thing that was upsetting me was the principle of the matter, where Karen took my property without consulting me and decided that she wanted to pay for it now instead of just asking me about it first or waiting for me to come back from the hospital. Surely she was not that desperate for a pool, right? Well, anyways, now that she had already built the pool, I did not want to be a pushover and give her the property just because she decided to take it from me. I left soon after and mulled over what to do. I decided that I would take the legal route. It was a calculated risk since I also do have my medical bills to pay for, but I was sure that there was no way in hell that Karen could have won this. Besides, if I pursued a lawsuit, I would get a lot more money than what Karen was offering for that land. It had been between this and reporting the incident to the police. I ultimately decided against reporting the incident to the police because, well, honestly, it didn't seem like there was anything the police could do since Karen had already built the pool. If I had called them while she was in the process of constructing it, they might have been able to help, but clearly I had discovered this mess too late. So I would have to approach an attorney. I took photos of the backyard fence, trying to show how it obviously shifted. Well, luckily, I managed to find a photo that I took with my friends a while back when I had a barbecue that showed the fence before Karen moved it. I also approached my neighbors asking if they could provide statements should I take the case to court. They agreed, and with all that in mind I approached a local attorney. Furthermore, I of course had documents to prove that Karen was full of it, papers that showed where my actual property lines were. I explained the situation to the attorney and he agreed that I could easily win if I decided to take legal action. Of course, I decided to do it. The day Karen was served the lawsuit, she came pounding on my door screaming for an explanation. She said that I had no reason to sue her and that she had offered me a good peace offering. She tried bribing me by upping the price, but I cut her off and said that it didn't matter how much money she gave me. The point was that she had completely disregarded me when she decided to build her pool and that I would be taking legal action to get what was rightfully mine back. She called me a dramatic a-hole, among other things that I probably should not repeat. When we went to court, my neighbors and the friend who house sat testified against Karen. Obviously, I cannot go into too many details for legal and privacy reasons, but I'll go over some of the general stuff they said. My neighbors said that construction started around 2 weeks after I left. My friend for one pointed out that they had never seen Karen before and that she had never come to the house during the first 2 weeks I had originally been gone. Karen's lawyer tried to argue that my friend might have coincidentally been gone while Karen came. However, we reviewed the security camera footage from my front door and it showed that Karen never showed up there. What really landed the final blow for Karen, however, was when the judge asked her to provide a permit for the construction of her pool on my property. And well, she got flustered and said that she didn't have it with her. The judge told her to produce one the next time we met. When we reconvened and the judge asked her again, Karen gave the judge a document. The judge looked at it and said that it had been clearly forged. Obviously, that is obstruction of justice. Karen was forced to admit that she had no permit and that she had hired a friend to do the construction for her illegally. That pushed the judge in my favor and I won the case pretty easily. The judge ordered Karen's pool to be shut down and demolished and for the original property line to be reinstated. Karen ended up behind bars for her crimes and I also got a decent sum of money, so that was great. I used a good portion to pay my attorney, but the other part will go to chipping my medical bills. Soon after, Karen's pool was demolished, much to her dismay, and re-established the property line. They also fixed the portion of my backyard that Karen had replaced with tiles for her pool, refilling the area with concrete. I could have kept the tiles, but I think that would have made everything look really weird and unmatching, so I decided to just use concrete again. The HOA also caught wind of the situation and one of the board members visited my house and I explained to her what happened. She apologized on behalf of the association for Karen's actions. She let me know that Karen was fired for her behavior and that they were intolerable of actions such as hers. It is rare that you see an HOA take accountability and action for anything, but I'm glad that mine is reliable. I'm glad this mess with Karen is over, but to end this on a happy note, I'm starting to feel a lot better now that I've gotten my cancer dealt with and everything is settled, so honestly, it's only up from here. And the next one is a petty revenge story, which is titled No Shampoo for You. So this happened today. I'm a shopper via one of those various apps people can use to order whatever they want with delivery included. I have a hard and fast rule of no tip, no trip, but there's one exception to this rule, when the stars align and the conditions are perfect. So if it is my last shop of the day and the delivery address will be along my route home. One such offer came through and it met the requirements. Less than a handful of items, no tip offered, but it would put me near home after the delivery. The first 2 of the 5 items was a very expensive boutique brand of shampoo and conditioner. On the shelf was 2 bottles of shampoo and no corresponding conditioner. I took a photo, sent it via customer chat and informed them the store was sold out of the conditioner. The customer responded immediately with, "You're stupid, I can see it in the photo." I then took another photo that shows the empty shelf, the item price tag on the shelf, and I explain again that they have one but not the other. The customer doubles down and calls me, and I quote, "You're a effing idiot." But the much more colorful word, this became a no-win situation for me. I knew that a bad rating was coming if I completed this order, and as no tip was offered up front, it was guaranteed that no tip would be added after, so I didn't respond at all, and I just cancelled this shop. When a driver cancelled, it immediately gets sent out to another driver. Knowing this, I did the next best thing. Took the remaining 2 bottles of shampoo, relocated them behind some Legos in the toy aisle on my way out of the store. The next shopper can now hopefully send them a photo of the empty shelf, void of both items. And yeah guys, thank you for watching, I will see you again tomorrow.